First of all, thank you, the organizers, for inviting me here, and thank you all for being here to listen to what I have to say. First of all, I am not a film critic. I am not somebody who is a cinema studies person. I love watching films, okay? So what the best, the relationship between me and films is that I can be called a cinephile maximum, that I like watching films. So, because I also have a hat of, being a social scientist, so a cinephile social scientist who has some opinions about the topic of the day for today. So these are, I must say, my personal opinion. And of course they are kind of backed by what I like watching, and also that please don't quote any of this what I'm going to say on you, because what I'm trying to do here is very new for me. So, okay, let me start. Masculinity has always been part of Hindi film industry, like any other film industry. It is in fact an inevitable element of exploring or representing any kind of social relationship or a network of social relationships. Our discussion today is more about how adding toxic to masculinity exposes relations of power, especially within the framework of patriarchy. So before I go further into it, let me just clarify a few more things from the subject that I know a little bit of, which I teach, which is gender. So if we are trying to get into this understanding of patriarchy, it may be a good idea, first of all, to clarify what I mean by gender. Gender, in certain ways, can be defined as perceived asymmetry of relationship between ideas of masculinities in plural and ideas of femininities in plural. What I would like all of you guys to kind of keep in mind that masculinity needs to be taken into plurality, and in the same way femininity also needs to be taken in plurality, and the different kinds of relationships that emerge through the interaction amongst these ideas are manifested through the sexed bodies that inhabit these ideas. Okay? So depending on that idea of gender, which is about perceived asymmetrical relationship, a relationship of power. Okay? And when this set of relationships amongst masculinities and femininities start highlighting the superiority of masculinity at a particular very specific kind of masculinity, then that set of relationships of power start constructing what we call patriarchy. So what I want to do now is to give you certain pointers towards the way I understand we have arrived at a film like Animal and its success. This is the way I think we can historicize the toxic masculinity of Animal. But before I go into it, can I do a quick hand-raising survey? How many of you have watched Kabir Singh? And how many of you have watched Animal? My God, okay, lots of people haven't seen Animal. May I, it would have been very nice to, to see. I have seen both. It probably would have been nicer to get answers from you guys to determine why you didn't go and watch Animal. And who, in your opinion, are those who have paid millions for the movie? Right. So, shall I just try a very quick survey that, one person, could you please say if you have seen Animal, why, how did you like it? You don't have to give any, an elaborate answer. Just say yes or no. Whoever has seen Animal, did you like it? No. No. Those of you who have seen Kabir Singh, did you like it? Or were you ambivalent? Well, I don't know whether I liked it or not.
But in such gatherings, you may never get an honest answer because of the confirmation bias.
Absolutely, absolutely. But, I can say that, yes, I have seen both the movies. I like certain elements. I don't like certain elements. You don't have to like a movie just, in totality. Right? Okay. Coming back to my point. If we start from the 1940s, we will see that a specific kind of masculinity, post-colonial nation state of India comes into being in 1947, and then we can say, of course, the Hindi film industry was there for a long time, but then after 47, it gets, it used to be there in both Bombay and in Lahore, and there were lots of different kinds of historical exchanges of understanding who were doing the films, financing the films, the craftsmen, there used to be European, technicians who used to work in the Hindi film industry. So there are lots of different kinds of histories to it. So we are starting after 1947 because then the entire Hindi film industry shifts to Bombay. It's located in Bombay because the Lahore portion just goes off. That becomes a different nation's industry in itself. So if we start from the 1940s, we will see that a specific kind of masculinity has always been celebrated in Hindi film industry. It may not be always the overwhelming one, but that strand always remained. A masculinity that breaks law in a way, becomes extra-legal, fights injustice or corruption, but remains moral within its parameters. Say for example something like Kismat in 1943, Ashok Kumar plays a crooked hero who is a kind of pickpocket, but also a very moral person in his own way. So you see, he doesn't obey the rules, he doesn't obey the law, but he is a moral person. In the 1950s and even until 60s, masculinity can be seen as represented by a protagonist who is also caring, respectful, with a clear sense of right and wrong. Raj Kapoor hero films, for example, something like, I don't know whether you have seen Shri Char Sobris or other, these kinds of films. Even Rajesh Khanna films, something like Roti. The brief comes with, of course, Amitabh Bachchan's angry young man. Now, defining this anger is quite key to disentangle the contemporary representation of toxic masculinity. Because Animal, from Kabir Singh to Animal in both the films, what emerges for me in a very fascinating way is the representation of anger. And the fascinating aspects of expressing the anger that one feels in different spaces. Within the familial space, within the university space in Kabir Singh, within the workspace, in Animal, where the character, the protagonist, Ranvijay Singh, goes to the factory which was built by his father and turns the workers and the other personnel in that through a speech into an anger. So there are ways in which anger becomes a core emotion in these films. So the anger of the 1970s, the angry young man, the anger he feels is towards an unjust social structure where family is actually the moral core of righting those social wrongs. If you remember, a film like Diwar, a very iconic film of the 1970s, Amitabh Bachchan starring, and Amitabh Bachchan and Shashi Kapoor, right? So the crooked brother and the policeman, good policeman brother, and the crooked, the gangster brother, it becomes a gangster to take care of his family, right? And of course, the mother plays a very important role in remaining the moral core. And if you remember that, Diwar happens in the background of a medal giving ceremony where the police brother gets the medal, but it also kind of ends as the story of the gangster brother who dies. So it is actually a framing of a kind of moral right man deserving his professional, promotion and appreciation for his work, which is actually kind of undercut by the gangster brother's anger towards the society. So that's very interesting to see how the 1970s anger is framed, represented visually. So if you remember Diwar, the most iconic of the 70s noir films, that becomes quite clear that how anger here is towards an unjust system, not towards a particular person. Of course, particular persons become representative of the unjust system, but that's a different kind of an anger. The next break comes with economic liberalization and the arrival of the NRI hero. And the best representative of it becomes Shah Rukh Khan, right? All his 90s and early 2000s films where he is the darling of the NRI audiences as well, right? The success of these films created a masculinity which is almost diametrically opposite to the angry young man who instead of a rebel, we get a total conformist. Because I have already told you, right, I am a cinephile, I love watching films, and must say that I really liked watching all these very glossy NRI romances as well. And I do remember them. Say, for example, in the Karan Johar family film, right. Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, because I mix it up with Kuch Kuch Hota Hai sometimes. So in Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, you see the young son wants to marry a girl of his choice, but the father, of course, in the form of majestic Amitabh Bachchan says, no, she won't understand any of our ways because they're very rich, of course. So he kind of tells his son to go and tell the girl that it's impossible for them to get married. And then the son actually agrees and goes off to tell the girl that they cannot be married. But then, of course, sleight of hand, the girl's father has just died and she has been left alone in the world with a little sister to take care of. And then immediately he almost replaces the girl's father, becomes her husband, right? So, caregiver. So, a rebel, but also a very conformist, caregiver kind of a person. So, even when the protagonist rebels, there are familial relations at play, and even when revenge becomes the theme, it is again sugar-coated with family. And revenge drama is something, what I remember, one of the best revenge dramas of this period, I think, is Mohabbat, right? It's actually totally a revenge story. And you see what the Shah Rukh Khan character tells the Amitabh Bachchan character by the end is that he rebels against Amitabh Bachchan's character throughout the film. But then it is all sugar-coated within a familial tone that You lost a daughter, I lost my fiance, and so I think we need to be together to relieve her memory. Together. So there's a manner in which family becomes, again, very important in the way revenge is extracted. Parallel to the NRI romance genre, there were a slew of B-grade action flicks led by none other than Akshay Kumar in the 90s. I don't know whether you guys know. There were all sorts of Saugans and Sainiks and all sorts of, and there, of course, the Khiladi Kumar, right? There were international Khiladis and supernatural Khiladis and whatnot. So there were all kinds of Khiladi films. So these are all B-grade action films, which are very popular in what the distribution territory calls, the C territories and the D territories, where the regular Hindi blockbusters are not really run very well. So the masculinity of these films celebrated violence, stalking, roughness in the way animal describes alpha male. And of course, if you remember all those really horrible songs from the 1990s especially, and if you remember also the Govinda genre of films, where the commodic so-called objectification of the female body remains one of the most significant ways of dealing with it. So with the rise of the action genre in the recent times, this B-grade film has now been elevated to the A-grade. There has been a rise of popularity, rise in the popularity of the action films right now, right? Okay? I mean, I'm sure I have tried watching the southern or the Telugu blockbuster action hits. I sat through entirety of Pushpa, couldn't understand much of it, but I liked the stylized actions a lot in that film. And of course the ingenuity of the crook hero also. That is also a very interesting way of celebrating masculinity in a certain way. So my final conjecture is animal and Kabir film become possible through two interrelated factors. The survival and the elevation to the A grade of the erstwhile B grade action flicks, which celebrated certain kind of masculinity which can be called toxic, where anger is not exactly justified, where anger is basically a core emotion of a film of being a man, that one has to be angry to be a man. And there is only one way of expressing anger, which is violence. So, and performance of violence. And that violence then becomes stylized in the way it's visually represented to us. So animal is that kind of a stylization of violence, which is pervading, which is everywhere, right? From the familiar space to the workspace to even the space of intimacy, right? Bhabi number 2, basically, if you remember, those of you who haven't seen Animal wouldn't be able to get the reference of Bhabi number 2, right? So there are, the intimate spaces also are kind of pervaded through performance of violence. So Animal becomes possible through this, and also because of this rise of the Telugu actioneer films, where it gives a language of stylizing the violence itself. Which, I won't say, there's a way people have been arguing that it is toxic because it is misogynistic, it's against the way he treats his wife, the way he kind of shuts his mother up on various occasions, the way his love for his father is so unnatural that it exceeds all kinds of logical frameworks. Yes, of course, but what exactly is the emotion we are dealing with? I think for me it is anger. It's love which is laced with anger. His love for the father is translated into a certain kind of display of anger towards the other people, who shows any quote-unquote disrespect towards or tries to harm his father. So love and anger become together in so complicated way in his mind space that the only way of expressing that remains performance of violence. So that's what he does. So, instead of, I would say, just kind of seeing it as straightforward that, oh my God, this person, kind of commits domestic violence. This person utters really objectionable, which is kind of also given out as a compliment to women. A very strange compliment that he gives his possible wife. He's wooing her and commenting on her anatomy, basically. So that's very problematic. Well, those are problematic areas, and those are all potential sexual harassment issues. So don't do it outside the world which animal creates. An animal's world is not this world. It's a magical, it's a different kind of world it creates. So one of the things I would say, putting on my hat of social scientist, that don't do anything the character of Ranveer Singh does. No. But if you want to understand that film itself, or think about it because it's so popular, because it makes you think about what makes people go and watch a mad, angry person do what he is doing, then maybe there are ways in which we can think about it. Okay, thank you.